Welcome back to the Eric Krown Crypto channel, as I struggle to say my name yet again, but plenty to talk about today as we do prepare for the next monthly closure, as we do see the last day of the trading month tomorrow night, that being Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, is going to really set in the biases of the next couple months to come. And there are a few very critical and key things to be watching out for that are really going to, drive into that. Of course, I also want to follow up on the short-term time frame analysis as well, and wish you a happy and healthy start to this nice Sunday morning over here, because it is a bright and it's a bright day in Helsinki, Finland, even though the world might not be so bright right now. But you know what? Elden Ring is out, so everyone's happy, as I am myself. But in a more sincere tone, I do want to bring a bit of attention to this, and hopefully in some way, potentially even use this YouTube channel for something a little bit more altruistic than just our current community here. But I did want to bring this up with the Ukraine situation, not because I'm an expert on the situation, not because I understand exactly what's going on there or anything like that. I do understand that it's a very nuanced thing. I understand that it's not necessarily black or white. And a really funny thing that I actually did this morning was I watched both like the Western news regarding it and also Russian news regarding it. And it's very interesting because they're literally the same. It's actually hilarious that they're so damn similar. But basically there is something that I do have a bit of conviction on, and why I am a little bit more in alignment with supporting Ukraine in this current conflict. And that simply comes down to, I have a conviction that any sort of entity, whether it be a country, whether it be an individual, whatever it might be, that threatens another one's personal sovereignty, that is not good. Obviously, that is not good. I think that the best way for the world to kind of operate, or just people in general to operate, is to be responsible for themselves and also be in conscious control of their own personal sovereignty. So when Putin came out the other day, or his administration, whatever it was, and threatened Finland and Sweden with military and political consequences for essentially making their own decisions, that to me, a bit hit home right there. So I figured that in that case, I wanted to bring this up. This is a donation address for Bitcoin, Ethereum, and I think even USDT, Tether, for Ukraine, if you want to give something to them to help them out. Obviously, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to go directly to their military efforts, but perhaps just to the people themselves, because they are dealing with an actual situation right now, which we are so fucking blessed in the first world that we've had really no major issues to deal with. Certainly not having issues to deal with missiles hitting our fucking apartment buildings or houses or whatever it might be. So again, I understand that this is a nuanced thing. I understand that not everyone's going to agree with that. Fair enough. I'm just leaving it out there for anyone who does happen to give a fuck, or if it does mean something to them. All right, cool. So let's get on to the actual content of the day. Oh, by the way, hit up my Bybit link. No, great time to show that as well. No, just kidding, man. Forget all of that bullshit right now. Anyways, let's get into the actual content of the day. I want to first follow up on the short-term time frame analysis, as we did hit our first target on the pullback from yesterday's video at the low $38,000 region right here. Should probably actually get that a little bit better. There we go. And that brings in the question of, was that the pullback? Is that it, or do we expect more? Well, first and foremost, when I do see a pullback in the short term off to the 382 Fibonacci retracement in this case, this would be a bullish retracement, by the way, I would look at that if we do hold a low right there as, a rather strong trending move, and I would have confirmation of the next big move to the upside, that being a significant move, that is, with any sort of a 4-hour closure above our range highs at 39,500 and about 50 in this case. On a 4-hour closure, nothing less. Obviously, a higher term time frame is going to add, further conviction onto that. But ultimately, I would be looking for the next move up somewhere between about 41 to 41,500 or so. That is very significant. However, for the higher term time frames, but we'll get to that in a second. However, but I should denote right here that whilst Bitcoin is seemingly catching a bit of a reprieve off of that $38,000 tick, I do want to denote that lower term time frame stochastic momentum is actually still pointed against it right now. We do see that 4-hour stochastic momentum is nosediving here alongside declining volatility on both HVP and, as we can see, on BBWP, which is actually fully declined here into single or almost single digits right there. I do want to denote that if this is going to be the low, that's exactly where you expect it to be, actually. You want to see it on declining volatility, and then you want to see volatility start to expand alongside stochastic momentum, or whatever momentum also you might be using, also expand. In this case, we actually won't see stochastic momentum turn back onto the upside with any sort of a closure above 39,800. I should denote, however, that the more that Bitcoin essentially just holds, Jesus, that is way too convoluted of a chart. The more that Bitcoin simply just holds sideways here without breaking that current low, we will naturally see the 4-hour stochastic momentum come all the way down, very likely into this trend line, probably midday or late day today. We've also seen the ADX have like a full-on retracement here as well, and of course the DMI is still going to be positive as long as Bitcoin's above 37,820 or so on a closing basis. Obviously, that will naturally change. So, if you are going to be bullish, or if I'm going to be bullish from this region right here, I'm essentially looking for Bitcoin to trade a bit more sideways, not close anything below about 38,000 bucks, and then more specifically into this early trading week, pop back above about 39,550 and continue on to those next major targets, which again we'll get into soon enough. But I do wanted to note that as long as 4-hour stochastic momentum is to the downside, as is the 6-hour as well, which by the way will be remaining to the downside as long as below 39,150, so that actually is a little more forgiving in this case. There is a threat that this actually does fail here, and I would be looking for the next targets to be hit, probably a shallow bounce at about 37,300, and then ultimately I'd be looking somewhere around the mid 36s, about 36,500 to basically 37 in this case. Anywhere below about 36,500 on even a medium-term time frame closing basis, I would declare this a failure and very likely to retest the lows from last week, that being below $35,000. Probably another short-term bounce there, and then ultimately lower into the next month to the range, the macro range lows at $30,000. Probably another bounce there and a few more along the way, but ultimately, lower than that over time, which we're going to discuss soon enough. Anyways, I should also talk about 12-hour stochastic momentum, which is also going to be upside as long as above 37, and daily, which is also freshly up as long as Bitcoin is above 35,850 or so. So, it is favoring the BULAs here still. And again, I just want to see confirmation above 39,550 for that next leg. And then let's talk about how that bleeds into the daily and what that means for the higher term timeframes here. So in this case right here, we do see something of interest. We see actually a couple things of interest. We do see that daily volatility is actually starting to contract yet again. So when I see contracting volatility alongside momentum heading up on the same time frame, I am looking for a corrective move, to be fair. Here's the thing though, if the short-term time frame does validate above 39,550, then I would be looking for that move to about 41.5 basically. Why is that significant right here? Well, that would be, in this case, a move back up to the bearish 618 Fibonacci retracement at 41,500. I'm talking about this area right here to highlight it off. Right in line with the green 55 as well, which is good confluence on a time frame like this. And that would, if surpassed on especially a 12-hour or a daily closing above there, would drastically reduce the probabilities that this is indeed a bearish move, meaning that it would be the first sort of initial etchings on a higher term time frame that are tangible, that would essentially tell me or kind of gear my own trading behaviors in favor of looking for a major reversal on the higher term time frame scale to the upside, with targets up potentially into the mid $50,000 territory over time. So I'd be like mid to late March, I'd say at earliest, maybe April. Of course, however, if you do want to play things a little bit more on the conservative side, which I'm typically a little bit more in alignment with that, I do look at the $45,000 on a 4-hour closure level as still relevant, the same shit as we've been looking at for the last month almost, and on a daily about 44,500. One of those three metrics would likely do it for me. The first and biggest early warning is above 41,500. I think that probably would do it for me in this particular case, as we're going to discuss soon enough. But until then, everything is just lower high, and technically this is a bearish setup for what it's worth. Again, especially with declining volatility right here, this is first and foremost it's a corrective move within the context of the downtrend. Yes, we do have our first higher low right here, but we certainly do not have a higher high. So all of that is in, well, I guess it's probably going to be decided this coming week. Anyways, okay, let me just make sure that we're doing well over here. I'm actually recording, and let me see what time we're at. Okay, we're at about 10 minutes. Okay, so I think we got that right now. Basically, in the short-term time frames, I'm looking at any sort of a higher low pullback, and yes, we do have potential hidden bullish evidence. as soon as Bitcoin does confirm a local low, which we don't have just yet. But essentially, I look at boo laws as having a chance here as long as Bitcoin is specifically above the 618 on the short-term time frame shallow retracement, which is about 36,500 below there. Things do change. Okay, cool. All right, so we've gotten all of that. Now let's get into the the higher term timeframes and talk about this next month to come and what's kind of at stake, especially in the month of March. So I want to reference two of the timeframes here that are really deriving the more long-term analysis for Bitcoin, that being on the 3-day and the monthly for the secondary charts right here. I'll first reference the 3-day because it was actually giving us a bullish look based off of the 3-day MACD and based off of the 3-day white 20 simple and also the PMAR in this case. So I wanted to follow up on this because it was invalidated way back on over here in the early portion of February when Bitcoin did lose the 20 simple. That was no longer a major bullish setup simply because, well, that was one of the key components of it. And where's my damn charts for this? I think it was right here. Yeah, it was right here. And I just want to kind of pull out for this 3-day signature that has worked out pretty damn well in the past with basically first the 3-day MACD crossing to the upside, which on its own has been pretty damn good on itself. Second, the white 20 simple, and then third, the PMAR over here as well, regaining the moving average on that essentially. All of those iterations in the past, all 7 out of 8 that we've seen in the past few years here, going back to 2019, have worked out for some pretty impressive upside moves. Now, the reason why this one is not active right now is because Bitcoin did lose a 20 simple, which was a validation condition for that, and so it is no longer like reasonable right now. Thing is, however, if Bitcoin does regain it, then yes, I would say that this one is once again back on board, and I would be looking for very likely that move up, probably somewhere around the last local high that we saw on this chart, which is about $45,000. So where would that currently be on the 20 simple, as that was one of the major conditions? That would be 40,550. So you can naturally see that while the 3-day time frame still has another 2 days left till closure, so I guess that would be Tuesday. Yeah, Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern time. Bitcoin boo laws will have a chance there because if the lower term time frame validation conditions for upside continuation are met, then very, very likely we will see it have a chance to close above that region because the target would be 41 to basically 41,500, I imagine. So that would look pretty damn good for the boo laws, and everything else is already in place here as long as the PMR remains above the moving average, which very likely will, and the 3-day MACD remains with upside posturing as long as Bitcoin is above, well, especially 34,500, but it even continued to rise on the histogram momentum above 37,800 or so. So I thought that was rather important because if that does happen, that'll be another somewhat potentially earlier warning signal that Bitcoin does flip around and put in a nice move into probably the mid $50,000 territory over time. Anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself right now. Also kind of round out the potential short-term boo law-ish case is not just the daily, but the 5-day stochastic momentum, which did have a chance to cross down last week, which was one of the validation conditions for major downside, which was not validated in this case. This will continue with upside momentum as long as we do see Bitcoin above 38,330. Bitcoin is rather close to that right now, and there is another 2 days left to go on that, so that would be at the same closing time as the next 3-day. And then, of course, the weekly, which we are going to see a new one tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern time for Sunday, will remain with stochastic momentum to the upside as long as Bitcoin's above 35. I think this is more of a formality because we did see CME already close at 39,115 right here, so very likely to continue with that. And the ADX has fully reset as well, so theoretically that next move should be a big one, so to speak. But again, 41.5 at earliest for the higher term timeframes for me is where I start to turn like major macro bullish, or I wouldn't say macro, like I'd be looking for a big continuation move to the upside over the next like month or two following that. And then 44.5 or $45,000 is kind of like the, the more obvious and conservative area. Anyways, okay, so we've got that. Yeah, now we need to talk about, we have some doggies coming in line here. Now we need to talk about, one last thing for the boo law side here as well. Let me get over here to this fundamental chart. I actually forgot to set this up coming into this, but a big thing coming into the closure on Monday is going to be what happens with the slope of the accumulation distribution indicator. Here he comes. We have a flying dog coming into the mix, right? Wow, it's Lucky. He's being a dog. He's doing a really good job at being a dog. Okay, now I have shoulder babies, so this is good. Anyways, thank you for that. Very, thank you for that, sir. Anyways, could you open the door? Actually, it's pretty fucking hot in here. Anyways, yes, so the slope of the accumulation distribution indicator is what matters most, especially coming off of extremes in the green zone and the red zone. And what do I mean by that? Well, what I mean by that is that every time that we have seen a slope change on this, which, do I have a chart for this? Actually, I don't. Do I? Yeah, I do right here. Every time that we've seen a slope change at those extremes, it has been, major shifts in direction. So you can see right here, to the downside. You can see over here to the upside, getting the ultimate low of that cycle. Getting a major high on the bull trap right here, getting the major low or the cycle low right here, major high right here before the Rona dump, and then the major low after that, leading up to $65,000. And then more recently, we saw it turn to the downside, basically all the way from the summer to where we're at right now. And we're starting to see the first etchings of it starting to really lose its downside slope there. I suspect that we will actually keep and remain with the downside slope, maybe even testing this bottom side regression trend line here. But at that point, as long as Bitcoin essentially just doesn't break down below, its major areas to the its major area to the downside, which is about $35,000 as of right now. Well, that could theoretically hold in there, and that'd probably be the more immediately Bula-ish look on this, which fair enough, that could be good. But yeah, I really want to see where that kind of heads into on that day, because that is going to, if it does get a positive slope, that would make me immediately bullish. If it remains with the downside slope, then, or if it increases the downside slope, that would make me immediately bearish. Very, very simple right there. Okay, getting on to the actual heart of the potential bearishness here, we do have a few major things to be aware of, which as of right now, we don't have the full validation for this. And let me just set this up over here as well on the monthly. We do see that monthly stochastic momentum, first and foremost, is heading to the downside as long as Bitcoin is closing on Monday below 54,350. And not only would it be remaining to the downside, but it would also be, if I can go to a better chart, here we go, it'd also be getting rejected from the bullish control zone, which has happened 1, 2, and potentially the third time right here in history. And that was this bull trap right here, this bull trap right here, and potentially the one that we're looking at right now as well. And to top that off, in a more like diabolical and important manner, we do see on this chart, if I go to, is this one? It is this one. We have 3 components right here, similar to the 3-day, but this one obviously going to be on the bearish side, and a significantly more powerful time frame being a monthly rather than a 3-day. But basically, we're looking first at the monthly MACD. We have 1, 2, 3 crosses in the past to the downside, and we are working on our 4th right now, or we already have the 4th right now. Just looking at these represented by the green vertical lines right here, you can see it hasn't ended too well in the past. We need to take that one step further, however, though, because all of those times that were accompanied by a closure below the white 20 simple on this time frame as well is when things really started to accelerate to the downside. So in this case right here, MACD crossed the downside first, then fails at 20, and then the next 4 or 5 months it finds its actual low, and it takes like another year for it to really reverse off those lows. You can also notice that once it regains the PMA over here, things were off to the races to the upside. Same thing over here, gets a MACD cross to the downside, loses the PMAR moving average right here, actually well before that, and then loses the 20 simple right here, like 1, 2, 3, 4 months after getting that MACD cross to the downside of the monthly. And then the next month, just complete dump off, finds its lows 2 months after that, and takes about another half year for it to rally up from those lows. Then same thing over here, going into the Rona dump from 2020, March. We see the MACD cross the downside. That was literally in January 2020. So before February even happened, we saw that cross the downside, which is incredibly interesting, simply because very few other things were suggesting like a potential major catastrophic move like this with a target like that in mind, which all of these moves had made it down to the green 55 in its totality after getting it. And this one, once it closed below the 20 simple, I mean, the move all happened at the same time. It was very, very fast, obviously, being that it was a bit of a, in some cases, in some people's minds, a black swan. Anyway, same thing over here. Monthly MACD cross on the downside. Bitcoin is still remaining above the white 20 simple on the monthly. So I would say the earliest warning signal that we could potentially see on Monday would be a closure below the 20 simple, which is 36,900, let's say 36,900. I'd like to give that a buffer zone because obviously if it closed right there, that wouldn't be too helpful. But let's say if it closed below 36,500 or especially around $36,000, that would be a damn good indication that this will play out. And we very likely do see a move over time in the following, sometime later this year, somewhere down to about $23,000 to $25,000. As every time that we have seen this happen, there has been a mega move over the course of the rest of the year down to the green 55 exponential average, which I do think is rather important because, well, it's worked out every fucking time. So there you go. Anyways, let's get into it over here as well. I do want to also provide a bit of color with this, with the metrics that we have over here on the Krown trading application, which of course you can find for free in the link in the description below. And first and foremost, we do see that fear and greed index is still within basically the extremely fearful zone. So that typically does favor a little bit more on the Bula side than the Bearish side, simply because, theoretically it should be a good time to buy when it's fearful, but that is never in itself true. It needs to be combined with price action. So I would not say that this is actionable or even relevant for the Bulas as long as Bitcoin is below specifically 41,500 for at fucking minimum. On top of that, we see that the global open interest has come down to our levels at 10 billion. I believe yes, indeed. Of course, my alert over here was triggered, which you can do yourself and even have it sent to your desktop. I have another couple alerts for 8 billion and 9 billion respectively, just because I do look at these as big pivots coming off of our last summer rallies. But ultimately, I do look at this as, as reset enough. So I do still look at the Bulas, I'd say that this is a little bit more on the Bula side as well, simply because we did see that open interest has been essentially coming down to these lows alongside price action, bouncing off our $35,000 low. Like a 15 to almost 20% bounce off those lows from low to high thus far. So that is suggesting that shorts are closing their positions because we're seeing the open interest come down alongside price action bouncing, which is a change in market dynamics here. So I'd say that is a little bit more on the Bula side. On top of that, we see funding rates are it doesn't really matter right here, to be honest, but it's slightly negative. Yeah, that favors the Bulas a little bit because you are paying to hold your short positions. But it's not, it doesn't really matter, to be honest with you. It's such minimal numbers. This is really splitting hairs. I shouldn't even talk about it. And then I think there was maybe another thing or two in the market data tab, of which in our indicators over here, let's see, leverage ratios come down a bit, but I don't think that data is still that relevant. Yeah, the other one would be the NUPL, the net unrealized profit and loss. We did see a lower low compared to the summer lows, even though price action was technically on a higher low. So there is a bit of divergence right there. That'd be more on the Bula side as well. MVT, I don't think that this works all that well, to be honest with you, ever since like 2018. And I think that was pretty much it from what I wanted to talk about over here. At this point, though, it really comes down mostly to what price action is doing. As always, the underlying market dynamics will always take a backseat to that. The only thing that I think truly can maybe even operate on its own almost is the global open interest alongside funding rates, which can be combined together. Anyways, I think that's going to do it for right now. Again, if I did have to call right now, I actually do think that short-term timeframes do trade a little bit lower here, but I do look at this as essentially a higher low with Bulas, okay, I suppose, they have a chance as long as Bitcoin is specifically above this 618 retracement right here, which is about 36,500 on a 4-hour closing basis, and nothing less, and more would obviously be better as well. So with all of that in mind, I want to wish you well. It's been a nice 23 minutes and 16 seconds with you, and we'll be back on tomorrow with some more live stream analysis. So with that said, take care, stay safe, and hopefully everything is going well in your portion of the world. See you hopefully very soon.